Welcome to the Writer Reads Short Stories. This is Earth and Lunar Dreaming, Part 2. Reddish brown, like a fox, she said. Reddish brown hair, black beard, green eyes, and skin the color of ivory touched with gold. Chitin had a very bad feeling he knew what kind of cat this might be. Is he a very big man? She asked. Is he a very big man? He asked, dreading the answer. Again he was met by a very solemn stare as she considered the question. He's not as tall as you, she finally said, but he is wider. Wide as in fat or wide as in muscly? Muscly, she said, nodding as though checking an internal picture. Keeping his gaze on her face, Chitin decided to test a theory. What does he smell like? Like a cat, she said, and then closed her mouth with an almost audible snap. Chitin watched as she narrowed her eyes, anger making them seem almost yellow. Oh, crap. And how do you know he's chasing you? Because he's here, she whispered, and the shadows around the door shifted, the cat moving like liquid lightning as it pounced. The girl moved faster. 1 minute she was standing in front of Chitin, and the next she'd leapt over his head and used his shoulder as a pivot to twist and come down behind him. Chitin didn't waste time wondering how she'd managed that feat. Instead, he gauged the cat's landing point and moved to meet him 5 feet before it. He flowed under the leap, grabbing the man by his shoulders, turning him in the air and dropping him hard onto the floor. He heard the pained woof as the air left the cat's lungs, then released his grip, placing his foot firmly on the man's chest. Who are you? He said, watching as the stranger looked up at him. The man's orange-yellow eyes flicked away from Chitin's face, seeking out the child. She is under my protection, Chitin said, not bothering to disguise the growl that followed his warning. The man gave a chuffing laugh. Little minx, he said. She won't let me near enough to explain. He moved his arm, and Chitin bounced his weight on the man's chest. The man stopped moving. My ID, he said, is in my pocket. He noticed Chitin's gaze take in the black cargo pants he was wearing. The second pocket on the outside. And I'm sure it'll match whatever story you've got to tell me. I am not going to hurt her. Uh-huh. Geez, call Odyssey then. They won't lie. What do you want her for? Chitin heard movement behind him. Don't go anywhere. The child stopped, and then she flung herself at the man on the floor, slapping his face. Bad kitty, she screamed. Bad, bad kitty. Hey! But to give him credit, all the cat did was give Chitin a look that asked for help before turning his face away from the blows. You are a bad kitty. Chitin reached down and picked the child up by the scruff of her neck. She gave a screech of frustration and then hung limply from his grasp. You know what she is, don't you? The man asked, and Chitin took his boot off his chest. She's under my protection, is what? Chitin said. You can't take her unless she agrees to go. The cat got cautiously to his feet, taking care to move clear of Chitin as he did so. Moving slowly, he walked over to one of the abandoned tables and sat. I can explain. The girl twisted in Chitin's grasp, and the wolf pulled her into his chest, looping a forearm around her waist. She looked up at him, her eyes a gleaming golden green. He is a bad kitty, she said. Let's hear what he has to say, Chitin suggested, and felt her push carefully against his arm. When she found she couldn't wriggle loose, she looked up at him with frightened eyes. Don't let him take me away. Not unless you want to go, Chitin told her. And you'll come with me. Chitin glanced over at the cat, who was watching the exchange with undisguised interest. The man nodded, orange eyes gleaming, ticking something off on an internal list. I'll come with you, Chitin assured her. Promise? Chitin hesitated and felt her try to kick free. I promise, he said, as her struggles became more desperate. I promise I will go with you if you decide to go. I promise, I promise, I promise. When she stopped struggling, he settled himself on the opposite side of the table. So are you? He said. The man frowned and pushed back his chair, but he remained seated. I am not a bad kitty, he said. His statement was met by silence from the child in Chitin's arms, and he sighed, addressing the child when he spoke next. All right, I am a were-tiger, just like he is a werewolf, but I am not here to hurt you. The girl made a sound that might have meant curiosity. Chitin waited, ready to move if the tiger tried to snatch the child or harm them. Looking across the table at them, the cat leant his elbows on its surface and rested his chin in his hands. Rafferty, he said, and Chitin was out of his seat and heading for the door. No, not you, her. It all started with Rafferty. We got the smuggling ring. Chitin kept moving, the child not struggling as he carried her away from the cat. Damn it, I'm trying to save you, the man protested, getting out of his seat. Chitin kept walking, turning through the door and heading left into the warren of rooms and corridors beyond. I know a place, the child whispered. You would fit if you were a dog. Wolf. The correction was automatic. Wolf, you are smaller than he is. Have you seen him as a tiger? She was silent, her lack of reply an answer in itself. All right, tell me when to change. Left, she said, tugging at his jacket as though being in his arms gave her any influence. He turned anyway. Left. He turned left, and then right, and then, when they found themselves in a long abandoned room with an empty bed frame, down. Chitin got down, and she scrambled out of his arms, kicking the door closed behind them before ducking beneath the small 3-foot square desktop. He heard a muffled thump and scraping, and then she whispered, Only the wolf will fit. Only the wolf will. Oh, fantastic. But Chitin did as she told him, and followed her into a crawl space where even in wolf form he had to shuffle along on his elbows and belly. How much further, he wanted to ask, but she kept moving, quick and quiet, for what seemed an age. All he could do was follow and hope the access shaft opened out soon. When it finally did, it was into a cavity he hadn't guessed existed. His notebook-sized computer and an autocam were stacked neatly on a slab of plascrete that had been set on two smaller pieces of debris to form a shelf. Chitin slid out of the access shaft and dropped a foot to the floor. Once out of the shaft, he stretched his legs and shook the kinks out of his coat. But he did not shift back to human form. The chamber was too small for that. He stretched again, sliding his forelegs out to touch one wall and arching his back so that his rump almost touched the other. His tail brushed the ceiling. The girl lifted a metal grill into place over the shaft and then went and sat on a small, neatly made bed on the other side of the room.